The Palatines first came to Ireland in 1709. They were welcomed by some landlords. Silver Oliver was from a prominent landowning family in southeast Limerick, and it was he who set up the Palatine community in Toherbane, Kilmoyley.
But they were the original people, the Palatines. They had to leave their own country because they were persecuted for their religion. And they were brought to England, and then they were put on a boat. They all thought they were going to America, but there was only over to Ireland they went, and then settled up around Limerick.
In the early 1900s, the All Saints Church of Ireland Church was built here in Toherbane, and the Fitzell family were the main family living in this area at that time.
In 1755, that was the first recorded Fitzell family here in Kilmoyley. There was about 7 different families. None of the families were related. There were none related whatsoever, and they were brought in as farmers because their skills with farming, they were very up to date in the farming, like way ahead of us here in Ireland at the time. And then as the congregation grew, they decided to build a church. But before that, the church was built, they were actually using a house on the land here around, a small house. It was used as a schoolhouse and used as a place to serve, to worship as well.
This was the original pathway leading down to the main entrance of this very small church. The structure would have been around 80 foot by 30 foot and constructed mainly of sand, gravel and stone. Unfortunately, the church is no longer standing. However, there are photographs still remaining that show what the church looked like. Here is a photo of the main door with the fanlight stained glass above it. There were several other stained glass windows in the church. In this photograph taken in 1999, we see a view of the vestry, with the arched stained glass in the background. When looking at the pulpit in this photo, we see the east window, which was quite plain compared to the much more ornate inside window of the chancel. This is one of the very few photographs that show what the inside of the church looked like. The photo was taken from the altar, giving us an idea of the actual size of the church when it was in use. The caretaker of the church, Jim Fitzell, can be seen standing in the aisle. Jim was a very proud man, and he always kept that church in immaculate condition. Today I'm holding that piece of history in my hands. This is the Bible that was used here in the All Saints Church of Ireland here in Toherbane in Kilmoyley. The Bible was here since 1957 until the church was deconsecrated and closed in 1987. The full leather-bound hardback Bible we see here was produced in the late 1800s by Virtue and Co. London, and inside contains many beautiful black and white illustrations. The Bible was donated by Miss May Crosby from Malahide, Dublin, in memory of Frank Crosby, son of Major Pierce Crosby, Ballyhide Castle. So I'm here now with one of the members of the congregation, Douglas Fitzell, and he's going to tell me his earliest memories of the church.
Well, I suppose as a child, I remember every Sunday morning we'd come down to Harry Fitzell's house, and we'd come in through the farmyard. Now, we'd always be down 10 or 15 minutes before the service would start, and all the men would go into Harry Fitzell's for a chat, and the women would come over to the church. And then, when the clergyman, as we call him, would be coming, we'd be called, and we'd all come over, and the service would start then, once we were all in.
I suppose, Douglas, there was a lot of preparation the night before.
There was. I remember my mother polishing the shoes and getting my father's suit ready, making sure it was spick and span for the following morning, and all the men wore suits that time, and everyone was well dressed going to service.
Well, since the church was built in 1907, I suppose a lot of clergymen came through the main gate over there.
They did. Well, I just remember two, William Pike and Raymond Doherty. But I always remember William Pike. He travelled in a motorbike, you know, and you could hear him in the distance always coming, like. And I went to secondary school in Causeway School, and he come out there and teach me Christian doctrine.
We were brought up in England, but we used to come back here on holidays every year. As soon as the school holidays started, we would come over. And I always remember we used to arrive home on a Saturday, and Sunday morning, you know, it was a time for us to put on our best clothes and walk across the yard. The place used to be covered in daffodils. And of course, we used to, as we went across the roads there, we used to look up, and there Douglas and the Fitzells were all walking down the road, and we'd all meet up outside the church, and it was lovely. I remember the old fire in the church, the fireplace, and it was a lovely little turf fire. It wasn't that big really, but there were the pews that were quite close to it, in front of it. We'd all rushed in the mornings to try and get as close as we could to the fire, because it was just lovely and cosy and warm. Yeah, there used to be a rush for the children, especially, to try and get in front of the fire. There's one particular funny story that my mother told me, and it was one Sunday during the sermon, the service in the church. Everybody was quiet listening to the service, and all of a sudden at the back of the church, just where the font was, a chicken started deciding to lay the egg. And of course there was a lot of noise and everybody laughing, and all the children in the church thought it was, you know, great. Yeah, and they had to sort of stop the service for a little while this chicken laid the egg.
Now, Pa, what inspired you to document the old church here?
Well, James, I was always interested in history and local history, and like I heard about the church being demolished, and I said, Jesus, like, you know, it was a pity there was never any record or anything made of it. So anyway, one evening, and like in the month of January, I called to a friend of mine there, Bill Fitzell, and myself and Bill sat down and we were talking, and I was asking Bill about the church. So I asked him, you know, would he give me the history, and I do a bit of research in it, and I did. And I just made a little booklet on the church from my own interest, and a little album, and all the windows and the doors and all that. And Bill then told me that, like, you know, about when the church was opened and when it was demolished and all that. And that's how we started.
There's very little left now of the All Saints Church here in Toherbane. All that is visible now is the four pillars, the two on the main entrance and the two here behind me on the west side. It is so important to document the history of how the German Palatines settled here and built this church. The All Saints Church of Ireland once stood here for nearly a century, nestled away on this tiny plot of land here in Toherbane, Kilmoyley, County Kerry.